It's that time of year again. It's time to get your pond ready for winter. Now, it doesn't have to sound like an onerous task, something difficult to take care of. In fact, I would always consider your pond preparation to be less intense than your spring startup. Some of the questions people have is, should I remove my pond pump for the winter? Do I need to cover my pond, like with a tarp or something like that? My fish, do I have to feed them in the winter? When do I stop feeding my fish? Should I leave my pond pump on for the winter, or should I remove it entirely? These are all valid questions. Other questions that people consider is, how do I get my pond ready for winter? What special things do I need to take care of for my fish? Do I need to drain my pond? Well, that would be drastic, and only if your pond is not properly designed for the climate that you are in. But things are definitely happening. It's fall time. You're transitioning from the early fall where leaves are just starting to turn some color on some of the trees. Your fish are still fairly active, and now you're transitioning into the time of year where the temperatures are getting lower during the nights. Your pond water temperature is dropping. And so it's important to monitor many of the things that are going on in your pond. And one of the most important tools that you'll have is your thermometer. That thermometer will help you to understand what's going on with your pond. Your pond thermometer will help you to identify the time when you change the feeding habits of your fish. As the water temperature dips below 60 degrees Celsius, your metabolism of your fish starts to slow down. That's the time of year to stop feeding them the high protein, high fat diet that's been going on all summer and switch them over to a cold season food, one that's higher in fiber and less fat, less protein. Your pond fish should be good and fat by now, but you don't want them to start using up any of their fat stores yet, so keep feeding them, but something that's much gentler for them to digest. When the pond fish get to that 50 degree, 10 degrees Celsius area, that's the time to stop feeding them. Now, if you're in an area where your autumn transition can be really extreme, one day you have really warm sunny conditions and the next day you might be close to frost, there might be a couple weeks where your water temperature flirts with that 50 degree zone, a little below, a little above. You just have to kind of watch your fish. If they're just laying down in the bottom of the pond, do not feed them. They're not ready to digest that food. If they're out and active, such as the ones you see here, now they're a little more active now because I'm at the pond. I'm of course filming some things. I've been walking around, so their instinct is thinking, oh, they might get some food. They really don't need food right here. They're nice, fat, healthy koi, ready for winter. But if they was a nice sunny day, the water was warm, it was above 50 degrees, then you could feed them some of that fall food. Now your pond filter, that's something that you should be taking care of regularly, making sure that it's not plugged up. If you don't have a filter, then it's just your pump that you're worrying about. Keep that pump clear of debris. Make sure things are good for it, that it's not getting plugged up to such a degree that your pond circulation is affected. Now, the plants in your pond, you should have cut them back. Here you see the water lilies have been cut back, and the leaf areas, the stems have been cut back below the water surface, and that's good. But you'll see some green around the bottom of the leaves, and that's their winter leaf. That feeds the root over the winter. Do not disturb that. It's a good time to switch over to cold water bacteria and adding liquid barley. Liquid barley doesn't cloud the water, do things like that, but barley straw extract, cold water bacteria, these are important things to add to your pond at this time of year because it keeps that denitrification, it keeps eating up that sludge, the dying debris that's in the pond, takes care of all of those things. So it's important to monitor that. That water temperature, again, 60 degrees, important to understand that, 50 degrees. Keeping beneficial bacteria in the pond. How you feed your fish needs to change. Cut your plants back, keep as much plant debris out of your pond as possible. And this will help you keep your pond in good maintenance. And here we have a few different instances of pond nets, right from just a basic roll of pond netting. This one particularly green. You can also get it in black for smaller ponds, and you just stretch it over. We would stretch it over the surface of that there, and all the leaves would fall on top. You'd take the net off, shake it out, collect the leaves, and your pond water remains uncontaminated. And the same thing can be done as you step up from just a basic net like that over to a product that might have stakes, and you can stretch out and is a little larger. This one's black, and this is one that I started using a lot in the last number of years, and it's the tented pond nets. And it's just like a tent you might use camping, has some structure to it, and actually creates that dome over top the pond. And what happens then is that the leaves don't land on the surface, and if it rains, the leaves get heavy and sink the net into the pond. Instead, that dome keeps everything dry. It's a really good design. We've recommended that for a lot of the clients that we consult with and that we work with. But those are good things to do so that your pond doesn't look like that. Okay, now let's spend a few minutes here and talk about that removal of debris from your pond. Leaves that blow into the pond, falling into the pond from the trees. There's a number of different skimmer nets or nets that you will find, and it's important to identify which is the best. Here you see a very fine meshed net. It's got a nice strong telescopic pole, but this net is really designed more for catching fish. To use it to drag out leaves from your pond to skim, the net very easily gets abrasions, cuts in it, and will destroy the net. So it's more for catching fish, not leaves. This one is more of a hybrid. It has that nice plastic edge around the top of it that protects the net from getting cut. So you can use it for skimming leaves and stuff out of your pond, but the net is still soft enough that you could use it to catch fish. So it's kind of an in-between. Still, make sure you've got a telescopic pole, good and sturdy, heavy duty, because those wet leaves get some weight to them as you're pulling them around. The one that I've used the most myself is the Pond Shark. Now, I can wholeheartedly recommend this. It's a little pricier. It's a real heavy duty handle. The head is specifically designed for pond maintenance. It's two-sided. One side has a rake, one side has a scraper. So if you are really trying to get those leaves out of the nooks and crannies off the bottom of your pond, if you're pulling water lily leaves out, this net is the one for pond maintenance. I wholeheartedly recommend it and have used it extensively. It does a great job. So keeping the leaves out of your pond is important. You can see here on a nice fall day like this, the fish are just laying out in the bottom. They're not really active. They're approaching the temperature of hibernation. So the pond water is about in that range of between 40-45 degrees. And if it got sunny today, like it was yesterday, the temperature would probably rise a few more degrees. But they're really just laying down in the bottom, and now that I've been visiting the pond here, they're moving around a bit, and we'll flip over to some underwater shots of the fish and what they're looking like during this time of year. Despite being built many years ago, it's still standing up to the test of time. The homeowner, they're using an interesting technique for this particular area, a couple slabs of insulation. And they find that because their fish are so large, these are 28-inch, 18-inch, just some massive koi in here, beautiful koi, that wintertime there's a lot less tree coverage, and so floating in this may not look aesthetically pleasing from viewing the pond, but it really helps their fish, gives them some cover, some shade. And as the bubblers are in action, you see the bubblers
working here. You see a de-icer unit in here that there's a little light on top. It's currently off because it's not having to work. The water temperature has not dropped, but everything's been installed into the pond. The pumps have been removed, the filtration has been removed, cleaned out, and then being put in to the garage for the winter. And now we're just really supplying good aeration, good strong aeration that's circulating the water. He has elected not to put a leaf net over. He prefers to come out a couple times a day and skim the leaves with his own net. And then you've got the de-icing unit that's sitting there. And when it turns on, it just keeps a hole open in the ice, similar as to the air stone underneath the styrofoam does. So that helps maintain a good transfer of gases out of the pond and oxygen being added into the pond through the air stone. So these fish, some of these fish that you're noticing here, now these are mostly original fish that we sourced for the customer 13 years ago and put into this pond. They're huge, they're gorgeous, they're in great shape, and anyone who says that you can't keep koi in a northern climate, this is up in Canada. They get wintertime here, and this pond will freeze over, and these fish come back year after year. They overwinter, they're well taken care of without a lot of problem or hassle in doing so. And this pond is a testament to that.